Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kim Holmes from SMG Health, and today I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, Physical Activity for the Busy Worker, presented by Hannah Flower, who is an accredited exercise physiologist, and Hannah will be taking us through the next half an hour webinar. As we do go along, if you do have any questions, please pop them in the question box on your toolbox on the side of the screen, and we will attend to these, Hannah will, at the end of the webinar. And just a reminder also, this session is being recorded and it will be made available to you through Get Healthy at Work after the webinar. And finally, you will have an opportunity to provide some feedback after the webinar via a pop-up page, so have a look out for that, or via an email. So enjoy the webinar, and over to you, Hannah. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Welcome to the Get Healthy at Work webinar. Physical activity is one of the 6 priority health areas of the Get Healthy at Work program, which we will review at the end of this session. So as Kim mentioned, my name is Hannah, and I'm happy to be here with you today to discuss physical activity for the busy worker. This topic is of particular interest to me as I spent several years at the University of Queensland researching it. More specifically, I explored effective ways to implement physical activity for shift workers, very busy, very time-poor workers. So this particular topic is quite timely, as recent reports show that only 56% of Australians participate in sufficient levels of physical activity. And what's more is, one of the most commonly reported barriers to achieving sufficient levels of physical activity is lack of time due to other obligations, such as work and home life. So in our time today, we're going to discuss the importance of physical activity. We will review benefits, best practices, common barriers, and finish with tips to successfully implement physical activity into your busy lives. So physical activity is essential for both physical and mental health. The benefits are diverse and have been studied for decades. A few specific mental health benefits that carry a significant level of relevance to the working population include things like improved cognitive functioning, decision-making, and focus. Not to mention, evidence shows that regular physical activity can reduce symptoms of both depression and anxiety. And more long-term, there is a significant body of literature demonstrating that physical activity reduces the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And in addition to the mental health benefits, some of the other evidence-based benefits include improved sleeping behaviors, increased energy, weight management, injury prevention, improved blood pressure and cholesterol, and physical activity has shown to aid in the prevention and maintenance of non-communicable diseases such as diabetes and some cancers. Now, in order to achieve these benefits, the recommended guidelines are to be active on most days to a weekly total of 150 to 300 minutes of moderate activity, or 75 minutes to 150 minutes of vigorous activity, or an equivalent combination of both, with the inclusion of 2 times per week engaging in muscle strengthening activities. So this may sound like a lot, but this can easily be achieved by simply incorporating 30 minutes of activity per day on 5 days per week. And it's important to note that these recommendations weren't pulled out of the air, but rather they were established through a rigorous review of worldwide literature. So the evidence was synthesized, and with the support of the Australian government and both national and international experts, these exact guidelines were created. Physical activity is defined as any bodily movement produced by skeletal muscle that expends energy, whereas exercise refers to the planned, structured activity that has an objective. So we're now going to spend the bulk of our time exploring the four main types of physical activity and what sort of exercises fall into these four types. So we will explore cardiovascular activity, resistance training, flexibility, and then we're going to finish with incidental activity. So cardiovascular activity, what is it? This refers to any form of activity that involves putting stress on the cardiovascular system. So in other words, it's any type of activity that increases your heart rate and your breathing rate. And the benefits are abundant, but at the forefront, cardiovascular activity enhances heart and lung function. It also has benefits on the skeletal muscles by enhancing and promoting blood flow and improving circulation to the muscles in use. For any activities that require impact, while cardiovascular activities that require impact, this form of activity also supports in bone strengthening. So types of exercise that fall into this category are things like walking, cycling, swimming, or sprinting, hill work. The intensity part, the intensity of the activity is, however, highly subjective. So as seen in the recommendation slide, the guidelines implicate that 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity activity is equivalent to 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous activity. So for those of us who currently incorporate cardiovascular activity into our weeks, a simple way to determine the intensity level that you are working at is to implement the talk test. So if you're able to sing while engaging in your activity, you're likely operating at a lower intensity. And on the flip side, if you're unable to string more than 3 words together in a sentence, you're likely operating at a higher intensity. So cardiovascular activities, these are good for heart and lungs, and the intensity is subjective and can be easily adapted, increased and decreased, and yes, again, highly subjective to the individual. Next, we'll move to resistance training, which is any form of activity that improves the strength, endurance, or size of your skeletal muscles. And the primary benefits of this form of training include building and maintaining muscle mass, and increasing muscular strength and endurance. So when it comes to resistance training, your mind may automatically think about a gym setting, a traditional gym setting with machines and dumbbells and barbells and free weights. And these are all great examples of resistance training. And interestingly, resistance training can also look like resistance bands, body weight exercises as well. Both support and promote muscle and bone health. So you don't always need a gym. Body weight can also promote and enhance and improve strength, endurance of skeletal muscles. And then we have flexibility, which is a form of training designed to support range of motion in our joints and to lengthen our muscles. So flexibility training plays an integral role in injury prevention, and it aids in the preservation of our long-term joint health. Flexibility training, also known as stretching, supports with maintaining healthy range of motion in our major joints, which is critical for optimal functioning. And in addition to its preventative attributes, flexibility training also supports athletic performance. So this type of training is important for all individuals, regardless of activity level. So high-performing athletes leverage this form of training to enhance their performance. And for individuals who spend a significant amount of time in sedentary positions, at desks maybe, flexibility training also supports there with posture. And many people of us on this virtual call today may spend a significant amount of time seated at our desks. And you may experience tightness in certain areas of your body. And if this is you, consider leveraging the Get Healthy at Work resources to receive a little bit of physical activity coaching, some tips and tricks to support with this. And then the final activity, the final form of activity, incidental. And this typically goes unnoticed. So incidental activity is any unstructured activity that occurs throughout your day. And the best part is that it counts towards your weekly total. So things that you may not consider but are included in this form of activity are things like active transport, gardening, taking the stairs, even walking to and from the shops. All of this contributes to that weekly total. All of this is activity. So we've covered the cardiovascular, the resistance training, the flexibility training, and the incidental training. Now that we have an awareness of these types of activity that we can adopt or continue to pursue, we'll explore a few things to consider prior to changing, or maybe if we are just adopting a new physical activity regimen. So for those of us who are just starting or considering starting an exercise regimen or interested in trying something new, on my screen here, there are just a few things to consider. So it is recommended that you consult a doctor if you have not exercised in a long time, have any known problems with your heart or chest, any pain or dizziness that's reoccurring, any serious joint or any physical pain, or have any elevated risk factors. And if you start a new exercise regimen and you find some symptoms start to arise, such as chest pain or dizziness, that would be an opportune time to check in with your doctor or your health professional. And we always want to stop exercising if we do experience that unusual chest pain, dizziness, or discomfort. So I'll just leave that there for a moment. And sometimes, despite having doctor's clearance and an awareness of the types of activity that we can participate in, different barriers show up. So while we're here, I invite you to just take a moment to consider what has stopped you from incorporating physical activity into your day. So just take a minute to consider what's prevented you from engaging in physical activity, a common barrier for yourself. We're going to spend a little bit of time going through a few common barriers and then identifying ways to overcome them. We'll walk away with a few strategies, and hopefully you'll see some of your common barriers show up here and ways that we can work through them in the next 13 minutes here. So some of the most common barriers to engaging in physical activity include lack of time, lack of motivation, lack of support from family and friends, lack of enjoyment, and maybe an element of self-consciousness. So these are just a few barriers that are quite common. So maybe one of these stands out to you. Now we'll go into how we can overcome these. So especially for the busy worker, here are a few strategies to overcome those prominent barriers to physical activity. The first, and likely most important point, is to choose something that you enjoy doing. Because if you choose something that you don't like doing, it'll likely be harder to stick to. Next is scheduling the activity. Often individuals that lead busy lives need the structure. So if we schedule our dentist appointments, we can also consider scheduling our physical activity as well. And then another helpful strategy, and I typically saw this a lot with nurses who do shift work, was to establish an accountability strategy. So if you know that at 4 p.m. after a work day, you may feel undermotivated, booking into a class or telling someone you're going somewhere, finding a way to hold yourself accountable can be helpful. And this ties nicely with the last point of finding a personal trainer or following a program. Because sometimes if we have someone waiting for us or creating something for us, we may feel more inclined to keep up with it. And another helpful idea could be to embed activity into things that you already do. So marrying activity with the activities that you're currently doing in your daily life. So an example of this could look like doing activity during your TV breaks. Next could be working with your environment. So timing exercise with the weather. And also signing yourself up for success with powerful habits like placing your exercise clothes beside your bed. And then one of the most important of all is to acknowledge, shine light on your successes as you have them. So once you've established kind of the type of activity, when and how you're going to do it, in order to powerfully set yourself up for this new behavior, these are a few things to take into consideration. And this is true for beginners, as well as individuals that may be increasing or adapting their current training load. So to ensure that seamless adoption of physical activity behavior, starting slow and building gradually, scheduling or prioritizing this new behavior, this new activity, being realistic about the goals that we have in this area, seeking support if we need that. So whether it's an accountability partner or just getting space from a loved one, maybe taking care of the kids to enable you to free up some space in your calendar. And then being consistent with it, just keeping that behavior consistent in your calendar, in your weeks, in your days. And then the last piece is just listening to your body. So taking rest and hydrating appropriately. All of these will contribute to the behavior as a whole. So taking all of the benefits and the barriers into consideration, and as a busy worker, we'll take a moment to summarize a few simple ways for how you can start to incorporate more activity into your days. So from a cardiovascular activity standpoint, this could look like shifting to active transport, so biking or walking to the train, a pre or post work walk, incorporating intervals, so maybe shorter bouts of exercise at higher intensities. In terms of resistance training, maybe exploring what body weight desk exercises look like, or adopting a short, sharp home exercise program. And then easy way to do this, to start with this, could be just doing 2 lower body, 2 upper body, and 2 core exercises. For flexibility, consider taking stretch breaks at work. Consider incorporating stretching pre or post activity. So if you are going to go for that walk, maybe taking a few minutes before and after your walk to stretch. Or consider just going online or reaching out to a professional to seek a stretching program that you can do before bed or first thing when you wake up to really open your body up for the day. And then again, we touched on the incidental activity, so taking the stairs, choosing to park farther away from the shops, setting a timer to move every 60 to 90 minutes. All helpful tools. So I'm going to shift now into our final piece. One more reflection to take a moment to consider what your biggest takeaway from this session is. What did you take from this? What could you implement now? And I'll shift now to questions. So Kim, feel free to support with that.
Hi, Hannah. Thank you for that. Some great information there. There's no questions at the moment. I think it was very thorough and lots of great sort of straightforward basic tips anyway. So no questions at the moment. But if you do have any that pop into your head after the webinar, you can email them through to the email at info@smghealth.com.au. But yeah, no questions at the moment. So I'll send it back to you, Hannah, just to end the webinar for everybody.
Sure thing. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, there is an opportunity for resources for physical activity coaching, and you can access this through these links here. So I can leave space for you to write these down. If you have any questions, there is a contact for this. Get Healthy at Work is a free workplace health program, and it's focusing on creating healthier environments and improving the health and well-being of the workers involved. So this is for you. And the physical activity coaching could be an integral unlock to starting something great for yourself. So yes, again, I'll leave this up here if you want to jot down the email for any questions or the website so that you can have a look. And knowing that we do have 2 to 3 minutes, again, I will leave space for any questions that come through the chat.
I do have one question, Hannah, from Nikki. Do you get as much benefit doing half an hour lots or one continuous hour of movement?
The weekend warrior. There are studies on this. Some people say there are benefits to doing bouts throughout the week, or there are people who do just one big bout on the weekend. And in terms of health benefits for consistency and longevity, the shorter bouts more frequently are preferred, especially when first starting out. Thanks for the question, Nikki.
Thank you, Hannah. That's the only question there for the time being.
Okay.
So we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Hannah.
No problem. Happy to speak on a topic that I've spent many years looking into.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Thank you again, Hannah.
Yeah, no problem. Would you like me to stay on?
No, I think we're just at 1 o'clock now, so we will leave it there.
Okay,
and as
great.
I said, the recording will be available. So yeah, and any more questions, they can be emailed through. So excellent.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.